Welcome to Live Unashamed, where we pause the show and invite members of our team to talk vulnerably about their own recovery, things they're learning, the resources that are actually working, and what it truly means to live unashamed.
Chris, how's it going, man?
Fan-freaking-tastic.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You know, I was thinking today we could talk about avoiding abusive self-talk. But then I just thought, oh my gosh, I'm so stupid. That's just such a dumb topic. I'm just such an idiot for thinking that.
Hence the reason why we need to talk about this subject, because every addict that I know does this abusive self-talk over and over and over again.
Yeah, me too.
What does that look like for you, man?
Dude, so biggest shame scripts for me are, I say shame script meaning like the abusive self-talk that I tell myself. Often it has to do with like, dude, I said the wrong thing. Like I made myself look like an idiot in front of those people, and that sets me off. Like within a half hour, I'm triggered to look at porn. Which
that was why you didn't even want to jump into the podcast thing with us. And you're like, man, I don't know. And
yeah, man, I don't know. I'm going to say something stupid.
You guys asked us to step into this. And then
yeah, no, dude, I'm
not good enough.
Like being on the podcast has been a hard thing too for me, because I'm like, I'm going to say something that someone's going to be like, that guy's an idiot. Like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Why is he running a podcast?
I'm sure we've all said something.
Yeah, I know. And I guarantee it's happened. But like, it's something that where I'm like, okay, like, that just keeps coming back to me. The other one is, you're bad. Why'd you do that? Idiot. Bad. Because that was the first one that ever came up for me in my life, where I internalized myself as the problem instead of seeing like kind of the nuance in life, which was that people make mistakes and people react poorly to you. And that doesn't mean that it's your problem or that you are the problem, right? That people just have bad days.
Right.
And I internalized that big time.
And we make mistakes.
Yeah.
Everything. Like I know sometimes I'll even catch myself sometimes where I'll do something or I'm like, man, I'm such an idiot. And I'm like, no, that's bullshit. I'm not an idiot.
Yeah.
I will always say that. I will always repeat that and be like, you know what? No, because that's not who I am. And I think it's a matter of changing your identity of how you see yourself. Because if you see yourself as, I'm just an addict who's worthless and afraid to live life without my addiction or whatever it is, and all the identity, the shame messages that have attached to it, that you've lived your whole life, that you've been telling yourself over and over and over again, you bet your ass you're going to believe that.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to always believe that. And so getting to the point where you can start to change that mindset of, no, that's actually not who I am.
Yeah. So tell me about that for you, Chris. Like, talk about a couple things where you've talked to yourself abusively and what you've done over the course of recovery to start working through those. You talked about I'm an idiot, right? You talked back to that one. What are some other ones?
I'm not good enough.
Okay.
That still rears its head every once in a while. And,
in what form?
And
like, what sets you off?
I would say sometimes with like getting my social media stuff for my coaching practice, like getting that ready, and I'm like, oh, dude, I could show you lists of all the things that I've got ready to go for my social media content that I'm creating.
Yeah. I
just don't have time to create it right now. But I keep telling myself that I can create it, and then I'm like, no, that's going to be so stupid. No, people aren't going to want, they're not going to want to listen to that, or create a system, a program where I can sell my actual coaching practices where they can just buy the actual program and they just pay one time and they have access to it for life.
Yeah. And
so much of me has been like, I'm not going to be good enough, or I'll compare myself to other people and be like, well, I'm not going to be as good enough as this person or good as this person. And I do that all the time. And I'm like, no, you know what? That's bullcrap, because I have what it takes. That's why we talk about that brotherhood and warrior heart all the time, is because we get that all the time, because I feel like God has placed that individual for me to be able to, hey, Chris is having a hard time. I need you to go and tell him that he's loved and that he's worth it and he's worth fighting for. So I tell that to my clients all the time that are just deep in their addiction. And I'm like, do you know that you deserve to be fought for? And they just start bawling because they don't believe that they're worth being fought for by anybody, especially themselves.
Wow.
And it breaks my heart every time. That's why I get emotional about it.
So, dude, like, young Chris in addiction, struggling, you're married. What was the catalyst for change when you finally started to feel, hey, I'm worthy of love. Like, I'm good enough. I'm smart. Whatever the reversal was of the abusive self-talk. What got you on that path where you started to change your identity?
One of the biggest experiences that I remember, and I've talked about it before on the podcast, is driving down the road, and I'm talking to my wife on the phone. It was after I just left my recovery group, and my wife is like, Chris, why don't you just let these guys help you? And I'm bawling, and I'm like, because I don't deserve it. And I remember the same spot that I was driving and everything. Like it plays over my head all the time. And I'm just like, and she says to me, Chris, you are absolutely loved by God, and I love you. Even after all this stuff that I did to her, and she's telling me, you are loved by God, and don't ever forget that. Like, no matter what you've done, he loves you. You're his. And you deserve his help. So just let him help you. Let your friends help you, because you deserve to have the help that you need.
It's funny you say that, because it was actually one of the big moments where I feel like the shame, and this was probably 2 months ago, right? I'm really in the throes of this right now. And there's still quite a bit of good work to be done for me in this area. But I was in the car. I think I might have told this story when I
shared your story.
Yeah, when I shared my story, and I was like so discouraged because I just got back from like the intensive in Hawaii, right? Like I went into the deep recesses of my life, and like talked about my relationship with my mom, and like, you know, just cleared a lot of that stuff out emotionally. And I came back and I was like, hey, I've been a warrior heart. I did like, you know, this trauma intensive, and I feel like I'm like really, I have a better relationship with God now. Why can't I stop looking at porn? And I was like, kind of like in my car, talking out loud, saying all this to God and being like, why can't I stop looking at porn? Like, what do I need to do to like stop looking at porn? And underneath all of that, Chris, I was saying, do you still love me even if I look at porn? Right. I was like almost testing God, because I felt so ashamed again. I was like, hey, you showed up for me again, and now I went back to it. And you showed up for me again, and now I went back to it. And I heard in my head these words, Sam, stop worrying about the porn. It's not about the porn. I just want to have a relationship with you.
Yeah.
That hit hard, man. Like, oh my gosh. I'm not a problem. I'm not a problem. I'm not a problem to you, God. Thank you for reminding me again. I'm not a problem.
Yeah.
It was so validating and freeing to hear that again. And I feel like the longer I'm in recovery and where I have like honest experiences with God, the more he starts to show up for me and have that kind of conversation with me. So.
That's awesome, man. So what do you do when negative self-talk comes in for you?
That's actually what I've been doing recently. I have a conversation with God, and I'm like, God, I'm starting to feel this thing again. And I don't actually believe that that's true. Like, what do you think? And I just, most of my praying these days is not on my knees. It's walking, it's driving. That's a big thing. Driving, I drive a ton. And walking, and I'll have like a really strong emotional reaction to something. And I'll identify pretty quickly, because I've been in recovery and I'm starting to see these things. I'll identify pretty quickly, like the thing that I just said to myself. I just told myself that I'm stupid or that I'm a problem.
Yeah.
I'll just have a conversation with him about it. And it is so freeing. It's not always like it, right? We wish it was like every single time I talk to God, he's like, no, it's not about the porn, Sam. It's not about the porn. I love you. I just want to have a relationship with you. It's not like that every time.
Right.
But every time I have a calm reassurance, it's like, yeah, dude, I'm here. I'm here.
But what I think he's doing every time that you do turn around to him and you do come to him, he's like, man, I freaking love it when he comes to talk to me. I love it. This is awesome.
Excited.
You know?
Because that's who he is.
Totally. Well, I think, one of the things that we talk to our clients a lot about is like a lot of that negative self-talk and the abusive self-talk comes from shame messaging that we received through our whole life. Yeah. It's that from being a kid and, you make a mistake and dad like rails at you and rails on you and is pissed off. And so you immediately just like shut down.
I don't have what it
takes.
takes.
Quiet. Totally. I don't have what it takes. And so understanding where those things are coming from, because like we sit down with clients and we're sitting down talking to them about, hey, what is a message that is true, you totally know it's true, but you just have a hard time letting it in. Because the piece that's holding you back from letting that in is just that inner critic and those shame messages that have just hit hard all the time, right? And so there's a cool experiential that we do, but we talk to them about how we handle that is passing it through a filter, the true and authentic filter of really who we are. And where do we get that? We get it from God. And so when we start tapping into really who we are and the identity of who we are, we start to see ourselves differently. And I'm going to grab my phone because it just dropped. Yeah. But I have a really cool quote talking about identity and how that changes.
Pause for effect.
All right. Grab this.
This is about identity and what?
You'll see. Okay, so in the book Atomic Habits, one of my all-time favorite books by James Clear, he says, true behavior change is identity change. You might start a habit because of motivation, but the only reason you'll stick with one is that it becomes part of your identity. And I look at that so often in addiction and like the abusive self-talk, the negative self-talk. So many people, it all comes from that identity of who Satan wants us to believe who we are. And we start to believe it because there are agreements that we made with the enemy saying, yep, I believe that. That's true. That's truly who I am. I'm worthless and I'm a piece of crap and I'm not worth fighting for, all the things, right? But when we start to change our identity is when we detach our addiction from our identity of who we are. Mm-hmm. So then we can start seeing ourselves differently and start seeing ourselves for who we really are. When was the last time that you looked in your mirror and truly looked at yourself and just said, what do I see?
I've never done that before.
Write the information down of like what you see and then go back to it and say, what does God see? I promise you, it'll rock your world. And it is powerful. And it is hard. I've had clients where they won't even look at themselves in the mirror because of the shame they feel, the negative self-talk that they feel over and over again. They can't even look at themselves in the mirror. And so working with somebody to detach that identity of who they really are and connect it with God.
So it sounds amazing. Like, dude, what I'm hearing you say and I think what I heard myself say is like, the only way you stop this abusive self-talk is you have to give it to God. You go to Him.
Totally.
And you find your identity in Him. Obviously, I was like, oh yeah, that's a nice little platitude. That's this nice thing we say. But at the end of the day, that's what it is. That's what it is.
And it isn't just doing it once and thinking, oh, I'm good.
Right.
You're going to do it over and over and over again till you started believing the new identity of who you are, that He shows you who you are.
Wow. Guys, we want to hear from you. What is it in your life that you need to give to God, the abusive self-talk, in order to stop feeling badly about yourself and change your identity. We want to hear from you.
And how
Sam,
you've gotten over the abusive self-talk.
Yeah. How have you done that in your life? I'd love to hear the success story. Obviously, it's never full or final, but we want to hear from you, Sam and Chris at unashamedunafraid.com. Guys, thanks for listening in. Don't be afraid to give us a 5-star review. We love those, and it helps us spread the message. If you'd like to contribute to this cause, go on unashamedunafraid.com and become one of our donors. You can become an outsider and get access to our bonus content. And until we see you next time, remember to live unashamed.